When you think about the American Revolution, who comes to mind? Generals, right? Statesmen? But what if I told you that one of the most important figures in the whole war wasn't a soldier by trade at all, but a bookseller? Today, we're getting into the incredible story of the man who went from selling books to arming an entire nation. So take a look at this guy. This is Henry Knox. And yeah, he looks every bit the Major General, doesn't he? A man of authority, a man of war. But here's the thing. His story doesn't start on a battlefield. It starts in the quiet, dusty aisles of a Boston bookstore. So how does a man of letters become one of the most critical military minds of his time? And let's be clear, he was absolutely essential. Listen to this. His 19th century biographer said Knox was second to none in George Washington's trust and affection. Washington's? That's incredible. So it really makes you stop and ask, who was this guy, and how on earth did he earn that kind of role? Well, to really get it, we've got to start with that unbelievable bond he had with the commander-in-chief himself. Just let this sink in for a second. Knox starts out as a mere volunteer, a guy who just shows up. And through sheer grit and what he taught himself, he climbs all the way to Major General. But it's more than that. He was right there, at Washington's side, for every single battle the general personally commanded. That level of trust is just off the charts. The fact that we even know his story in such detail is kind of a miracle. Most of what we have comes from 56 big portfolios of his personal papers. But they were almost lost forever. The ship carrying them wrecked, and the papers were submerged in water for hours before they were rescued. Think about that. The story we're telling today was almost completely washed away. Okay, so this indispensable man, whose story was almost erased by the sea, where did he come from? To find out, we have to go back to his childhood in Boston. All right, so picture this. C Street, Boston. This is where Henry Knox was born, July 25th, 1750. And get this, he was the 7th of 10 sons. A big family, and they definitely weren't wealthy. His childhood was just tough, really tough. When he was only 9 years old, his father, a shipmaster, left for the West Indies and just never came back. He died 3 years later. So this forced Henry to drop out of school at age 12. Suddenly, the responsibility of supporting his mom and his younger brother landed right on his shoulders. That's a huge weight for a kid. He ended up finding work as an apprentice in a bookstore. And for a boy with a curious mind who'd been forced to leave school, this wasn't just a job. It was everything. It became his university. He suddenly had access to all the knowledge in the world, and boy, did he take advantage of it. So what was he studying in there? Oh, just a few things. He taught himself French. He dove into the classics, reading about the great leaders of history in Plutarch. But here's where it gets really interesting. He developed a deep fascination with military science, specifically focusing on engineering and artillery. So while he was selling novels and stationery, he was secretly studying the manuals of war. And all that reading, all that self-study, it was about to be put to the ultimate test, because Knox was coming of age in a city that was basically a powder keg, just waiting for a spark. But don't get the wrong idea. Knox wasn't just some bookworm hiding in a corner. The guy was a natural leader with a strong athletic build. There's this great story about a rowdy Boston holiday where the wheel on a massive parade float broke. To keep his neighborhood from being disgraced, Knox just put his own shoulder to the axle and physically carried it through the streets. That's the kind of person he was. And that same strength of character was on full display on that terrible night of March 5th, 1770. As tensions between the citizens and the British soldiers just boiled over, Knox found himself right in the middle of the chaos that would become the Boston Massacre. But here's what's amazing. Instead of joining the angry mob, Knox, who was just 19 years old, actually tried to stop the tragedy. He grabbed the British commander, Captain Preston, by his coat and pleaded with him, warning him that if his soldiers fired, Preston's life would have to answer for it. It was this incredibly brave, desperate attempt to pull everyone back from the brink. So, okay, we can see his principles were crystal clear. But as a young businessman trying to make his way in the world, those principles were about to slam right into his livelihood. By 1771, at just 21 years old, he opened his own shop, the London Bookstore. It quickly became this fashionable spot, a popular lounge for the city's elite. And who were the elite in Boston at the time? British officers and wealthy Tory ladies. Yup, the very people whose government he was starting to seriously oppose. And this is where the rubber really meets the road. A Tory bookseller from New York sent him 5 chests of tea, a super scarce and valuable item in Boston, and offered him a commission to sell them secretly. For a young merchant, this was a tempting, golden opportunity. But Knox refused. Just like that, he was presented with a chance for easy profit that would have compromised his patriot principles, and he didn't even hesitate. He chose his cause over his coin. And with that decision, his path was pretty much set. Knox was no longer just a bookseller with an interest in military theory. He was actively preparing to answer the call to arms. His passion for the military wasn't just theoretical, you know? He didn't just read the books, he put it all into practice. He helped found and served as second-in-command of the Boston Grenadier Corps, an elite volunteer militia known for its discipline and its fancy uniforms. He wasn't just reading about drills, he was out there doing them, mastering them, and teaching them. But that dedication came at a personal cost. In 1773, while he was out hunting, his fowling piece exploded in his hands. It completely maimed his left hand, costing him 2 fingers. It was a serious, brutal injury for any man, let alone one aspiring to a military career.
And this brings us right back around to the beginning. Let's look again at that first portrait we saw. Notice his left hand, resting there on the cannon. The artist, Gilbert Stuart, has skillfully concealed the injury. The man who would become America's greatest artillery chief is literally hiding a wound from a firearm, a personal mark of the explosive power he would soon learn to command.
So by 1775, all the pieces are in place. We have a self-taught military genius, a man of principle, strength, and unwavering resolve, all forged in the turmoil of Boston. He was ready for war. But this leads to the next great question. An army needs cannons. How on earth would a bookseller get them?